Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in Pioneer. Today we're looking at Eldrazi Displacer combo. Eldrazi Displacer combo is a Bant creature deck centered around Eldrazi Displacer, a 3-mana 3/3 creature that costs white, which can blink any other creature for 3 mana, one of which must be colorless. The plan is to reduce the cost to activate Displacer's ability and then pair it with some combination of other cards that allow you to activate it infinitely. Currently, the 3 cards that reduce activated abilities in Pioneer are Training Grounds, Biomancer's Familiar, and Zirda. Personally, I think Familiar is the best of the 3 in this deck since it's a creature and thus fetchable via Chord of Calling and Coco, and also 1 mana cheaper than Zirda. With Displacer's ability costing only a single colorless mana, you can then pair it with Eyeless Watcher, a 4-mana creature that generates 2 Eldrazi Scion tokens which can be sacked to produce colorless mana. So, sack one of the 2 Scions and blink Eyeless Watcher, generating 2 Scions, netting 1 Scion per loop, thus generating infinite colorless mana and infinite 1/1s. Alternatively, you can pair Displacer with one of the creatures that only makes 1 Scion token, such as Eldrazi Sky Spawner, for infinite ETB and death triggers, but not infinite mana or tokens. This can then be paired with yet another card that triggers whenever a creature enters or dies. For example, with Prosperous Innkeeper, you gain infinite life. However, even with infinite tokens or infinite life, you can still lose against certain decks if you pass the turn. For example, combo decks like Nykthos or Lotus Field can still beat you, or you can get board wiped by blue-white control and eventually just lose to Teferi. So ideally, you want to be able to guarantee a win on the same turn. And this, unfortunately, is where we run into problems. You see, at the time of this video's recording, the options in Bant colors in Pioneer are slim. Altar of the Brood can infinitely mill the opponent, but ideally you want a creature since Altar isn't fetchable off Chord of Calling or Coco. Sage's Road Denizen initially looked like a good option. In fact, I almost ran the deck with it in my Moto Pioneer Marathon before realizing that it doesn't actually work with Eldrazi Sky Spawner because Sky Spawner is technically colorless. I eventually settled on playing an off-color creature, in this case Zulaport Cutthroat. Even though the deck doesn't have black lands, you can still Chord or Coco into it, or use the treasures from Prosperous Innkeeper to play it, but it would still be better if there was an option in the Bant colors. You also don't technically need blue because of Zirda, but I think it's still worth it for Biomancer's Familiar and Training Grounds. The mana base for the deck is also less than ideal. You want a guaranteed untapped green source for turn 1 ramp dorks, but you also need enough blue and white sources to guarantee curving into Biomancer's Familiar and Eldrazi Displacer. Additionally, you also need lands that produce colorless mana for when you have Displacer but haven't assembled the combo yet, which means running a bunch of pain lands. Aside from all that, the rest of the deck includes 8 mana elves for ramp, Chord of Calling and Coco to assemble the combo, 1 copy of Duskwatch Recruiter and the Reality Chip as card advantage engines, being the other best creatures for reduced activation costs, and 1 Skyclave Apparition to deal with pesky permanents. And then there's all the uses for Eldrazi Displacer. Even without the combo, Displacer is ridiculously good when you make its ability cost only 1 mana. Here's a long list of things you can do with it. Blink any of your creatures with ETB triggers to re-trigger them. Blink opponent's creatures to make them unable to attack you. For example, this is particularly good against Parhelion. Blink opponent's tokens to kill them, such as Fable's Goblin Shaman, Shark Typhoon's Shark, Wandering Emperor's Samurais, Ezeka Chariot's Cat tokens, etc. Blink any of your other creatures to save them from removal. If you have 2 Displacers, they can blink each other. Blink your creatures like Skyclave Apparition or Spell Queller that have both an ETB and Leaves ability, hold priority while the abilities are on the stack, and then blink them again to permanently exile spells with Queller or not give the illusion token with Skyclave. Blink your creatures that have some restrictions on them to remove them, such as the Pacifism effect created by Extraction Specialist or the Exile when it dies effect from Sarah Paragon. Change which card your Phyrexian Revoker is naming. While Containment Priest may seem like an odd choice since it disables Chord of Calling and Coco, in combination with Displacer, it permanently exiles opposing creatures. Reset transformed creatures to their base state, such as Reflection of the Mirror Breaker or a flipped Polukranos. Similarly, reset creatures that have counters on them like Thing in the Ice or +1 counters on Ledger Shredder or from Thalia's Lieutenant. Remove status effects such as Dauntless Bodyguard's Protection. Blink your opponent's creatures that have activated abilities in their upkeep to deny them the activations, such as Mana Elves, Voyaging Satyr, or Rona. Against Nykthos, if you have enough mana, you can blink Cavalier of Thorns over and over to mill them out. Blink creatures to remove all their auras, such as against the creatures that aren't hexproof in the auras deck, or Curious Obsession from Spirits. And also against Spirits, since Spell Queller's trigger is mandatory, you can blink it to force them to exile their own spells on the stack. And many, many more. I hope you've enjoyed this look at Displacer combo. Thank you to my supporters, and if you enjoy these videos, consider subscribing and supporting the channel, and take care.